All right, Larry Krueger here from the Pig and a Pickle Krug Show with a little 49er video. As today we take a deep dive on Dee Winters. Winters and Nick Martin will be battling it out for that linebacker job next to Fred Warner. Who will get the job? We'll talk a lot about Dee Winters coming up next. But first, we're brought to you by Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. Check them out. They're in Emeryville. They're in Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. or until they run out. Go say hi to Damon and Mary. Get some brisket chili. Tell them the Krug sent you. We're also brought to you by Sharp Corners, sports cards and collectibles. They're at 205 Cypress Avenue in Pacific Grove, California on the Monterey Peninsula. Anthony Catania is the owner. He's at 831-521-5264, and he's a great follow on IG at Sharp Corners 831 on the gram. And we're also brought to you by our good friends at Claw Daddy Arcades. That's right, Claw Daddy Arcades. They're a great follow on Instagram at Claw_Daddy_Arcades to find a location near you. They've got locations down in the South Bay at Capitola Mall and in the Central Valley at Visalia Mall, opening later on this year. Thanks to Claw Daddy Arcades for sponsoring the Krug Show. All right, let's talk a little bit about Dee Winters. Dee Winters, Niners linebacker. And first of all, you say, well, is that his name, Dee Winters? Yeah, D is short for De'Vondre. So his real name is De'Vondre, De'Vondre probably, Winters. D-E Monderick, De'Vondre Winters. And he's an interesting guy. He was born in Brenham, Texas, grew up in Burton, Texas, which is a tiny little town. You know, I only really know it because I've scouted through this part of the country, but it's a tiny little town with a population under 1,000 for sure. West of Houston, on the way to Austin. Burton, Texas, little town, as I said, west of Houston on the way to Austin. And he went to Burton High School, and he was a 3-star recruit. He played mostly wide receiver in high school. Played a little wide receiver, a little safety, a little linebacker, and then was recruited by Gary Patterson to TCU. Gary Patterson, one of the great defensive coaches in college football history, immediately moved Dee Winters from safety, where he was recruited as a safety, to linebacker. He moved him immediately to linebacker. And he played at TCU from 2019 through 2022. He was first team all Big 12 in 2022. And the Niners took him in the 6th round of the 23 draft, pick number 216. And, you know, he was not a heavily recruited guy. He was a 3-star high school recruit. He chose TCU over Arkansas, Northwestern, Texas Tech, ASU. As I said, Patterson recruited him as a safety, moved him to linebacker. He played 11 games as a true freshman in Fort Worth for the Horned Frogs, and then started as a sophomore. Started 10 games as a sophomore, was second on the team with 65 tackles his sophomore year. Then started 12 games as a junior and led TCU his junior year with 74 tackles, and then had a phenomenal final year at TCU. He led the Horned Frogs to the national title game in his final year there. 79 tackles, 14 and a half TFLs, tackles for loss, 7.5 sacks. And then this was the game where I saw him just dominate. He was the MVP of TCU's semifinal win over the Michigan Wolverines. He had 7 tackles in that game. He had 3 tackles for loss. He had a pass broken up, and he had a 29-yard pick six interception return for a touchdown. And he won the MVP. And he shot gaps like he was a blitzer, but he was just, that's all. I asked him about it. He said, hey, man, it was all about film study. I recognized the formation. I recognized the plays that they were running out of a certain formation. They flashed that formation, and I shot the gap. And he had a number of big plays in that semifinal win over the Wolverines. They would eventually lose the national championship game a week later to the Georgia Bulldogs. But, the scouts got to see Dee Winters, in full flight there against Michigan, and he was outstanding. And it was probably the game that got him drafted. Now, he finished his career as TCU's all-time career tackle leader. He had 246 tackles in 48 games. And then, going into the combine, he really focused on his speed and running the 40. And he got his 40 under 4.5. In fact, he ran 4.49 at the combine, which was the fourth fastest among linebackers his year there in Indy. He also had 1.56 on the 10-yard split. So he's really quick, and he had good strength, 20 reps of 225. Where he didn't really shine was in the jumping. Didn't show that lower body explosion. 31-inch vertical, pretty low, pretty small, pretty unexplosive lower body. Didn't have great lower body numbers as far as the testing was concerned. And then came in as a rookie with the 49ers, and he played 15 games as a rookie. None of them were starts, all off the bench. Wound up with 10 tackles. And then 2014, last year, was just an odd year. I mean, you had Nick Sorensen as the defensive coordinator. Winters played 14 games, but he only made 9 starts. He had 38 tackles. He sat for much of the year behind De'Vondre Campbell, which was just a ridiculous decision because Campbell had no agility. It was clear to me in training camp. It should have been clear to them as well. Did they do anything about it? No. They sat Dee Winters on the bench, and they played De'Vondre Campbell, and they told us to our faces that he was a locker room leader. And I could have told them a month before they cut him that he was a locker room cancer because he was screaming and yelling and swearing and all kinds of issues in the locker room in the weeks that led up to his ultimate refusal to go on the field, and then eventually they cut him. Because he refused to go on the field. But, I mean, there were tons of indications that Campbell wasn't happy. And the Niners never should have played Campbell over Winters. Campbell, you saw Kyler Murray go 50-plus yards in week 2 or week 3 or whatever it was, and he ran right by De'Vondre Campbell. That was his play to make, and he didn't make it. The biggest game of the year was the second half of the year game at home against the division rival Seattle Seahawks, and the Niners totally died in the fourth quarter on the defensive side of the ball. They had absolutely no juice, and on the key play of the game, Geno Smith takes off. Campbell's got a 10-yard head start on him and couldn't lay a finger on him. Could not lay a finger on Geno Smith. We're not talking about Michael Vick. We're not talking about Lamar Jackson. We're not talking about Steve Young in his prime. We're talking about mediocre mover Geno Smith. Ran right by De'Vondre Campbell. Gave him a little shimmy, a little juke. Campbell did not get a finger on him, and he scored the game-winning touchdown. So, everybody knew Campbell was just a placeholder for Greenlaw. When Greenlaw got healthy, they sat Campbell down, and he acted like it was the world's worst thing, and then he pretty much just said, I refuse to play. And then they said, get the hell out of here, De'Vondre Campbell. But the first mistake was from Nick Sorensen playing De'Vondre Campbell, who could not move at all, simply because of money invested in him, over Dee Winters, who was quite a bit faster. Now, if you watch Dee Winters, what does he do? He's a guy that wins with speed. He's got experience at both inside linebacker and outside linebacker. He knows how to read and react. He's got good instincts. He's flowing towards the football. He's an undersized guy. He needs to be covered up by big, physical, heavy defensive tackles that keep the big offensive guards off of him. If you let your O-lineman climb to the second level, they're going to pick off Dee Winters. He's at 6'1" and change, 227 pounds. He's just too small. He gets engulfed by the guards. So he needs to be covered up by big defensive linemen playing in front of him. But you know what? He's a really, really talented guy. And everybody recognizes it. And he's had a phenomenal offseason. In fact, here is Fred Warner. I asked Fred a few weeks ago about Dee Winters. And Fred says Dee Winters had the best offseason of anybody on this 49er team. And here is a little bit of Fred Warner talking Dee Winters when I asked him about it during OTAs.
Fred, which of the young linebackers impresses you the most? You got 3 of them there. Yeah, I think D's probably had the best OTA out of anybody on the team. I feel like he's come along since last year. I remember he came in as a rookie, was struggling to learn the plays and trying to get in shape and all those little things that you got to learn as a professional. And has come in this year and just been on it, making plays left and right. He came in great shape this OTA, so he set himself up to have a great training camp. He's going to train hard this kind of summer training and have a chance.
There you go. Fred Warner, the one of the great linebackers in the sport, talking up Dee Winters, and he has had a really good offseason. And now it really comes down to, starting on the 15th when the rookies report, you're going to see Nick Martin, showing up looking to earn a starting job. Nick Martin is not a guy who's happy just to be on the team. He wants to be great. And it's Nick Martin against Dee Winters for the starting weak side linebacker spot. Now, they're both, similar in that they're smaller, faster, speed-oriented players. I think Martin might be a little bit naturally stronger. My biggest complaint with Winters is that he doesn't seem like he plays with the same kind of fire and intensity of a Dre Greenlaw, the same kind of anger. He doesn't seem like he's trying to, deal out punishment. There's times where he will fall off blocks because his strength at the point is not his greatest thing. He's a better guy to shut off the run, going to the sideline because you're not going to outrun Dee Winters. He's going to beat you to the sideline. He's going to beat most running backs to the sideline. So if you want to run wide on Winters, he's probably going to beat you. But if you want to beat Winters, you might want to run right at him. And where I think Martin might be a little bit stronger at the point of attack, 26 reps of 225 for Nick Martin. He's very, very strong. He's even a little bit smaller than Winters. Nick's like 6'1", 222. Winters is like 6'1", 6'2", 227. So they're both undersized guys. But I kind of feel like Martin has more natural play strength and falls off fewer tackles. He'll overrun some tackles. There's no question about that. They both have a tendency to do that. But I think there's a little bit more strength at the point of attack from Nick Martin than Dee Winters. Winters' advantage is he knows the defense. And talking to Johnny Holland a few weeks ago, Johnny was like, hey, man, this guy's had a fantastic offseason. He's probably our most improved player. It's go time. It's now. It's not now or never for Dee Winters, but it's absolutely go time. They moved on from Dre Greenlaw. There's an opportunity there to start opposite Fred Warner at weak side backer. You got a guy in Winters who's played middle backer, he's played weak side backer. He's been in this defense for a number of years. But then the one disadvantage he has is the guy who's in charge is Robert Saleh. And Robert Saleh is back with the Niners now. Let's call him a first-year defensive coordinator. Nick Martin was his hand-picked linebacker. So in some ways, Winters is from a previous regime, and sometimes guys from previous regimes don't get the same look or the same chances to win the job as the guys who are with the current regime. So that's something to look for as well. But definitely, Dee Winters knows this defense. He can fly around. He can make plays sideline to sideline. He runs sub 4.5. He can cover backs out of the backfield. He's very, very athletic. His weakness, and I think Martin's weakness as well, they have to be covered up. So the Niners have to get good defensive tackle play out of C.J. West, out of Alfred Collins, out of Jordan Elliott, out of Kalia Davis, out of anybody who plays inside. Even Mikael Williams, if he plays inside on some downs, they've got to prevent opposing offensive linemen from climbing to the second level and picking off their linebackers. And it's going to be a great competition. I would probably give the slight edge to Martin because of his violence, and there's something about Martin that screams special, where Winters is a fast linebacker for sure, but his lack of strength at the point, his propensity to fall off blocks from time to time, I think unless he's improved his play strength, I think that's going to be where Martin's going to beat him out. But the Niners have two linebackers there that are undersized but can really, really run. And if you can cover up their legs and protect them from the interior offensive linemen, I think you're going to have two good ones for years to come in Nick Martin and Dee Winters. All right, thanks to Pig and a Pickle for being the title sponsor of the Krug Show. Thanks to Sharp Corner Sports Cards and Collectibles and Claw Daddy Arcades for sponsoring this video. And thanks to you guys for supporting the Krug Show on YouTube.